How is the Hare Krishna song different from Lady Gaga's song?
That's an excellent question.
Oh, very good song. Right?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Yes. Right. The difference is what we call descending and ascending. So the sounds of this world are creations of this world. Right? They're created by the people in this world. It's material, it's mundane. So we find some sounds more appealing, some sounds less appealing. Right? And even the question comes, if I have a fleshy ear, fleshy eye, tongue, voice box, etc., how can you make spiritual sound? Maybe the only kind of sound you can make is Lady Gaga. Right? Or what if Lady Gaga chants Krishna Nam? Right? So this question actually comes up in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 87th chapter. How can you use material things to produce something spiritual? And so at the heart of the matter, it is addressed the issue of what is spiritual sound proper. Right? So there we have the conception that it must be descending from the spiritual world into this plane. That no amount, no arrangement of matter can generate what is spiritual, but what is spiritual can influence and move matter. Right? So spiritual sound proper, whether Krishna Nam, Maha Mantra, or the sound of revealed truth in the form of Vedas, Vedic scriptures, Puranas, Bhagavad Gita, etc., again, must be descending from the service domain. As I mentioned previously, Rishi, like we hear the word Rishi to indicate spiritual teachers, it means Drishi. Within this word Drishi means to see, to experience, to observe. They're not creating something. They're observing some spiritual quality, aspect, some aspect of reality, and expressing that in this plane. So we call that descending knowledge. Guru Maharaj framed it in this way once by saying, when someone challenged, if the finite can know the infinite, it's not infinite. His response was, if the infinite cannot make itself known to the finite, it's not infinite. So we can say the real qualification for something to be genuinely spiritual is that the infinite is in the background, making that sound, making itself known to the finite. It's not that the finite, from a finite perspective, is speculating about the infinite. But again, as we told, this formula that inspiration means influence. So you will see, if you study her, or any of, and not to find fault with her, it could be any musician, any writer, thinker, etc. Their inspiration points to be under the influence of someone, of another. So always when you study any musician, any thinker, philosopher, etc., you'll find traces. Oh, we see that was expressed previously by another singer, writer, thinker, etc. And they were under the influence of another singer, writer, thinker, etc. So all inspiration is influence. Then it comes down to a question, is it mundane influence or divine influence? So what qualifies something as spiritual sound is divine influence, descending from beyond this world into this plane. Otherwise, it's mundane, whether it's mundane in a gross sense, and an intermediate sense, or in a very subtle sense. It's still mundane. But it is interesting to note when you deal with, let's say, art, right? They're called recording artists, right? And there's other type of artists. But when someone is supposed to be really purely inspired, most often they will describe the experience as if something came down and used them as an instrument for expression. They'll say, oh, I don't know where that came from. Just, it all came to me in a flash, all of a sudden. Or critics of art, they will say, we see in this artwork, there's no trace of ego. The artists themselves may have had a very big ego. We read books, people were shocked to find out, they'll like study 10 great artists, and they'll say, this guy was a total jerk, or he had a huge ego, he was mean to people, and people, but he produced such beautiful artwork. And what they mean by implication is those moments were inspired, where it's as if some higher power came down and used this person as an instrument for expression. So and all the while, they'll start using adjectives or words that say like, it was divine or almost divine, right? Because they don't want to give you the impression that they believe in God. So they say, it was like that. What people describe about spiritual experience, it was like that. But if an artist, and here speaking in a generous sense, if someone who's an artist can speak of being inspired and offering themselves as an instrument for revelation, then why not spiritually speaking? The only question will be, in principle, we can't object to the method, right? The delivery mechanism. All we can really question is whether or not it's real, right? The method of delivery is irrelevant here. What our interest will be is it real? Does it really have a touch of the divine? Is it really under divine influence? Or is it something else? We don't need to argue about how it came. What substance is there? Is it really divine descended substance? Or is it something else? And to make that judgment or assessment, then we'll have to take these things seriously and study them carefully under the guidance of experts. Again, like with paintings, when we were at the museum in Florence, Uffizi, they showed this one painting, and they say, up till this time, it was thought to be of Leonardo da Vinci. Right? So they're saying up to 100 years ago, it was always thought that this painting was made by him. So it had a particular value. Then when they discovered, or believed they discovered, that it's not, its value went down. It became a lesser work. So they have a system, rightly or wrongly, they have a system for assessing value. And it's very subjectively based. Right? As we look, all those paintings that you'll see, they're just some canvas and some paint. Maybe the total objective value is like, let's say, 100 euro. Right? Total, but their subjective value is 100 million euro. So how does something that's only objectively worth 100 euros become 100 million euros in value? That means experts who've examined its qualities find that in the subjective world, it has value. And that's why someone's willing to pay that much money for it. Its subjective value has far eclipsed its objective value. If you can understand that principle, then you can understand the spiritual principle, and you can understand the spiritual world is the substantial world, and it's of infinitely more valuable than the objective world. The objective world is the least aspect of the spiritual world, actually. As Guru Maharaj says, it's a part of the perfect appears to be imperfect. That's what the material world is. It's actually a part of the perfect world that appears to be imperfect. Whereas that's subjective evolution. Objective evolution is saying the imperfect is getting better and better and better and going to produce the perfect. That'll be interesting, right? That what's wrong, it'll get a whole lot of wrong, or wrong reconfigured in a particular way becomes what's right. Right? Or darkness will generate light. Right? That's the prospect that we're more or less buying into. Whereas, as Guru Maharaj said, so is it more tenable to believe like a stone under a particular configuration, reconfiguration, or set of evolved circumstances will generate consciousness and become aware of its own existence? Or is it more tenable to think that stone, the objective world, is floating in an ocean of consciousness, that all mundane things that are hard, heavy, have depth, weight, height, length, breadth, etc., all subjective concepts, a cluster of subjective concepts makes an object. The whole objective world is floating in consciousness like an iceberg. It's consciousness which is sustaining all of this. And, as Guru Maharaj says, what is this world but a part of the perfect appears to be imperfect. That's all. So whether a sound goes beyond being pleasing to the ear, mind, intellect, does it penetrate the deep heart's core, right? The soul. Does it touch the soul plane or not? So in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, we hear the expression, Vaikuntha Nama Grahanam, spiritual sound. Does it have the quality, the characteristic of spiritual sound? And again, as we mentioned in this example, the same sound can be there from an external point of view, but whether it qualifies as spiritual or not is an internal, subjective consideration. It's not that spiritual sound sounds a particular way externally. Even here, we know in this world, like if you call somebody's name, or you say something affectionate to someone, right? A man to a woman, let's say, the woman can say it with feeling, like you mean it. Or is it just an empty expression? The words can be the same. Mother with the child, lovers, they have this understanding of when words are meaningful and heartfelt and when they're superficial and shallow. Same words. Or actors. An actor can go in front of a camera and make everyone cry by expressing certain words, certain emotions. But whether it's real or not is another consideration. So if we're going to really understand what is spiritual substance, then we'll have to carefully study that under the guidance of experts. Like anything. So Rupa Goswami, the expert on Krishna Bhakti, says, beware of two things. One is imitation, and the other is acting. One can imitate the symptoms of devotion, and another person can act like they have that thing. Saying in both cases, there's no real substance there. So when we say, well, how do those experts determine whether a work of art is a masterwork or done by the original? They have to be serious about it, engage in a fair amount of study to become acquainted with that level of understanding, to judge whether something is substantial or an imitation. So the same thing spiritually. But the Manu Samhita gives some encouragement by saying, Hridayena vinugato yodharmastat nibodhata, that the heart will at last verify or recognize what is its own. We may say, well, admittedly, I don't have that expertise to make these judgments. Well, then come in connection with those who do. Vidyadbi sevita shadbi nityam advesha ragibi hridayena vinugato yodharmastan nibodhata. It says, come in connection with those experts who can accurately, properly represent spiritual substance, and hearing from them, what will be the last means of verification is that the heart will recognize its own. It will recognize, it will sympathetically resonate and vibrate to what is being expressed by the spiritual experts of revealed truth. Hare Krishna.